Howdy, boss. Welcome to another Collection Connection, the game where we challenge you to figure out the thematic link between two seemingly unrelated albums. I play the game with my brother, Plastic Eric, who plays his half of the game on his own channel, the Plastic Soundwave Cult. He presents an album from his record collection every Monday. I present one from mine every Thursday. And although we're trying to stump you with the specific connection that links the two albums, it's ultimately just an excuse to talk about records and to celebrate our love of music. Today I'll be forging a connection between the avant-garde electronic music on Who's Afraid of the Art of Noise, the 1984 debut album by the titular Art of Noise, and the post-grunge alt-rock of the second Breeders album, 1993's Last Splash. But first we need to reveal the connection between the prior pair of albums, those being Who's Afraid of the Art of Noise and Scritti Politti's Cupid and Psyche 85. And the connection there is that both bands took their names from the titles of Italian writings. And even more specific and arcane, if you want to get into it, they each changed one letter from the original work to get their band name. That was a C changed to a T from Scritti Polizzi to Scritti Politti for Scritti Politti. And the Art of Noise took their name from an essay called The Art of Noises, and they dropped the final S. And while he didn't get that specific, we did get a correct guess on the broad connection of Italian writings, and that was from Murdoch at Murdoch's Music Minute. He put down a successful guess, so shout out to him. You can check out his recent videos. He's done a fun one on some of his favorite cover versions of songs that you may know and appreciate, and did a live reaction, I think, to a brand new Paul Weller song. So those are new videos up on his channel. You can check those out. And with that, let's get on with the show. Okay, so Eric showed Who's Afraid of the Art of Noise from the Art of Noise. Don't have this album. I do have their follow-up album to this one, which is Invisible Silence. And that one has Paranoia, which is my favorite Art of Noise track. And it's an album that I've only gotten in the last few years, specifically because the single version of it had the Max Headroom narration sort of over the top of it. I really liked that, and I knew that it was not on the album version. And back then, I didn't know which one I wanted to buy. You know, I'd prefer to buy the album, but I ended up buying neither until a remaster came out some years ago that had both versions on it. And I've actually come to really appreciate the album version almost more than the Max Headroom version. But that's my personal experience with the Art of Noise. The first album, as Eric alluded to in his video, my wife was not enthusiastic about listening to. And as much as I know the title was like Close to the Edit and Moments in Love, I didn't really recognize them when listening to them, which surprised me a little bit. They were minor hits, maybe more dance club hits, but yeah, they didn't ring an immediate bell with me. And I will agree, the opening track, which is the track that my wife reacted poorly to, is a little bit of tough going, kind of right out of the gate, kind of takes it to an extreme with a lot of kind of rhythmic crashing noises. And it smooths out quite a bit after that. It becomes much more listenable, I think, thereafter. Beatbox is good. And even then, though, because my wife didn't like, I turned it down, so I didn't get a great listening experience to it. I tried it again, kind of skipping that first song, and yeah, it's not bad. I don't know that I would get it, but it's definitely the Art of Noise. It's a well-named band. I always thought of it as Ann Dudley's band, even though I guess it was formed originally from 3 assistants / proteges of Trevor Horn's. Trevor Horn was there for the first album, for the album that we're talking about here, Who's Afraid of, but more in a kind of idea and production capacity. He was never really part of the band, and they split ways with him after that first record, did their own thing on a different label, and it wasn't until they disbanded and reformed in later years that Trevor Horn became associated once again in like the 2000s. But I think eventually all of the other people peeled off. I think the only constant member of the band has been Ann Dudley. I may be wrong about that. So I may have some reason for thinking about them in those terms. But either way, yeah, good record. And couldn't figure out which album cover to use because they have a different one in the UK, and I tend to think of where the band comes from, the first release there, as being sort of the more official version than the more familiar to me US cover. But yeah, anyway, Art of Noise, there you go. And moving on to the Connection album, today I'll be talking about The Breeders' Last Splash from 1993. What I'm holding is a 30th anniversary edition. Japanese, I believe. It came with an obi, which I pulled off just to show you the album cover in full. It is an album, it didn't necessarily pass me by. I was certainly aware of the Breeders in the 90s, but again, it fell in that lull when I wasn't really finding new music that I loved. I was kind of avoiding the radio, wasn't hearing much new that was interesting to me, and just never ended up getting it. And it wasn't until literally about 3 to 4 months ago, coming across it in a music store, this new edition, and I said, hey, there's a gap I could fill in. I've listened to it a couple times, and then I listened to it a couple more times here in the last couple of days. I still don't have enough of an impression to give a really strong impression, other than the fact that I have no history with this album. We have a potential viewer I know who is a big fan of Kristen Hirsch, which I'm assuming maybe means that he's also a fan of Throwing Muses. And if we play the Kevin Bacon game, Throwing Muses, Kristen Hirsch was in with Tanya Donnelly, and then this band, whatever they're called, the Breeders, were formed initially as a partnership with Kim Deal of the Pixies and Tanya Donnelly. Now, Tanya Donnelly only lasted for the first album and one EP thereafter, and then she had a little bit of overlap on that EP with Kim's sister Kelly Deal, and I always thought of it erroneously as Kelly Deal, and it was more Kim Deal joined later when the Pixies finished. But that's wrong. It was Kim Deal in the same fashion as Ann Dudley. Kim Deal is the one person who has been omnipresent in the band through its history. Kelly Deal has been in it for all recordings, I think, since this album and the EP that preceded it. But despite having Cannonball as it was an individual track that I downloaded in the early days of iTunes, so I've had the track Cannonball. I always knew that was a song that I liked. Wasn't really familiar with anything else, but I heard Divine Hammer off of this record not that long ago, and it kind of brought him back up in my head, which is why when I saw the album, I said, hey, maybe I'll pick that up. But I'm not even sure what the singles were beyond Cannonball, and it seems like it appeals to me more as it goes along. SOS is an interesting short track. Yeah, gosh, I just haven't listened to it enough to really match song titles to actual songs, but I'm enjoying what I'm hearing from it. And a lot of people have told me since then that the first album, the one with Tanya Donnelly, Pod, is their favorite Breeders record. But this is my only experience with them. I'm a big Pixies fan, was aware of Throwing Muses, but never an active fan of Throwing Muses. And Tanya Donnelly, after that first stint with the Breeders, went on to form Belly. Yeah, in the end, I guess I don't have a ton to say about it, other than the fact that I'm looking forward to learning more about it as I listen to it. I've enjoyed what I've heard while I've listened to it. It just hasn't been enough to really sink in with me. This edition has a couple of bonus tracks on it, including a version of Divine Hammer that has Jay, I never known how to pronounce his name, Masks, something like that, from Dinosaur Jr. on it. But it seems like a fun record, a poppier record than the Pixies would have done. So I guess in the interest of keeping things brief, if you can think of the connection, that I'm thinking of between The Breeders, Last Splash, and Who's Afraid of the Art of Noise by The Art of Noise. I'll give you a couple clues. One's in the thumbnail on the video, and the other is that the connection, like the previous connection that I did, where two of Tom Petty's Heartbreakers did session work on each of the two albums that we were talking about, and I talked about how you kind of needed knowledge of a third band, that being Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. This is a connection between a third song, and if you can guess the connection, leave it in the comments. First right answer will get a shout out in the next video. Unless you don't want a shout out, just say. Here's my guess. Please don't mention my name. I don't want to be caught watching this channel. It's all up to you. And to end with a few program notes, I bought a microphone. And there may be a bit of a learning curve involved with it, but hopefully the sound will be vastly improved from here on out, and this will give me the opportunity to get the camera out from right in my face, give me a little more leeway in my editing. It doesn't have to be a static shot at this point. The only movement I could really do is to zoom in even closer on my face, and I don't think any of us wants that. But if you have any feedback on the new sound, if it's too much, not enough, if I need to keep fiddling around with it to find the right balance, let me know in the comments. I'm welcoming all feedback, constructive criticism. I am really trying to up my game and make the videos more fun for me to make and more fun for you to watch. So with that, I've said my piece. So I thank you for watching. Bye-bye.